I want to pose my first question to Ayesha because obviously you're building a mobility as a service platform. So I really love your thoughts on what that means in the context.
So mobility as a service is essentially the equivalent of the iTunes of transportation. So the idea was that instead of having residents, city, going from one app to another to book different kinds of mobility options, that they should be able to do everything just on one platform. So it's been really interesting for us because the crux of it is in two things. One is integration. And this is what people call the API economy, right? So we are seeing whether it's financial services or any part of smart cities, all players have to kind of play together to form an integrated, real-time, personalized experience for a consumer.
I'd love some of your thoughts about, the various ideas you've looked at about how we can actually sort of accelerate and also do more lightweight construction to basically sort of meet this demand as these new design lines are revealed.
The way I look at how technology is going to help us step in a more environmentally friendly way into this construction boom that we're seeing is by using machines and technology where they're most needed. So I think that's where the kind of the main role of technology is going to be, and the new paradigm that we'll see in automated or autonomous construction is the open source side of it.
My question for the panelists is how do we get to good ideas? How do we get to use cases and business propositions that are actually matter to people and that are not these terrible top-down things that come up in corporate strategy meetings when you're basically saying, well, this is what we have in the cupboard, so let's figure out how we can sell it.
It basically starts with empathy. Because ultimately, it is not a quantitative metric you want to get to, and you won't achieve the end goal if you just think of these like short-term quantitative goals.
But I think another aspect of this is, with the empathy, people are living the everyday lives and coming up with solutions for themselves. The challenge is that it's not just crowdsourcing solutions, but how do you give voice to the multitude of processes where people are identifying problems and creating solutions? People are solving ideas, but how do we leverage those small ideas, I think is an interesting challenge.
Each of these camps that we're discussing are partly the reason the smart cities dialogue has been sterile for so long is it was driven purely by tech, and now they're finally realizing social science. I'm curious, how do we do a better job of making these communities speak to each other? Architects in their own silo.
We actually can communicate with data, and especially when you're working with the private sector, they are motivated to understand the customer. Part of our success at AddoAI has been to find a language where academics can talk to industry, and there's actually a respect on both sides. And I think data is a great way to drive that communication forward.
I would say on the practical side, it's to allocate a small space to test. And then once you can start do some A/B testing, and then you have data, then the municipality can make an educated decision rather than say, I like your face or I don't.
I think for me, it still goes back to kind of the idea of making us a more inclusive society. And how do you make sure that the voices are all heard?
Questions from the floor? Do we have any questions out there?
Just would like to ask, what is the low-hanging fruit that Bangkok should work on?
Yeah, I want to go back to the point I mentioned in my talk on microtransit. We're seeing this already. Startups like Via out of Israel and New York, that you basically get picked up 3 blocks from where you are, and you get dropped off 3 blocks from where you want to be, and it figures out the right, accurate enough routing with the vehicle to do it affordably to make a profit and do it affordably. You wouldn't need to build BRT or metro lines at that point. That to me is the greatest opportunity from a societal benefit standpoint, at least in mobility.
I agree, because I think we've seen evidence that a few people in conversation said that they've noticeably seen less congestion because of the subway systems and the rail systems that have gone in. And I think here, the fact that you have a subway backbone, the MRT, microtransit as well as backbones, and heck, I know that there's like a bike system here, but that maybe for the last mile. I mean, there's some really cool neighborhoods where it may make sense. And I think that it's a great opportunity, since it's a different conversation than many other cities are having, to really leverage that, to push kind of mobility innovation forward.
So with that, could we please get a round of applause for our panelists? I certainly enjoyed this.